Chapter 77 of the Eustace Diamonds. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Eustace Diamonds by Anthony Trollope. Chapter 77. The story of Lucy Morris is concluded. On the day appointed, Lucy Morris went back from the house of the old Countess to Fawn Court. "My dear," said Lady Linlithgow, "I am sorry that you are going. Perhaps you'll think I haven't been very kind to you, but I am never kind. People have always been hard to me, and I'm hard. But I do like you. I'm glad you like me, as we have lived together so long. You may go on staying here if you choose, and I'll try to make it better. It hasn't been bad at all, only that there's nothing particular to do. But I must go. I shall get another place as a governess somewhere, and that will suit me best." "Because of the money, you mean?" "Well, that in part. I mean to pay you something," said the Countess, opening her pocket-book and fumbling for 2 banknotes which she had deposited there. "Oh dear no, I haven't earned anything. I always gave Macnulty something, and she was not near so nice as you." And then the Countess produced 2 10-pound notes. But Lucy would have none of her money, and when she was pressed, became proud and almost indignant in her denial. She had earned nothing, and she would take nothing, and it was in vain that the old lady spread the clean bits of paper before her. "And so you'll go and be a governess again, will you?" "When I can get a place." "I'll tell you what, my dear. If I were Frank Greystock, I'd stick to my bargain." Lucy at once fell a-crying, but she smiled upon the old woman through her tears. "Of course he's going to marry that little limb of the devil. Oh, Lady Linlithgow, if you can prevent that." "How am I to prevent it, my dear? I've nothing to say to either of them. It isn't for myself I'm speaking. If I can't have things go as I thought they would by myself, I will never ask anyone to help me. It's not that. I mean, I have given all that up." "You have given it up?" "Yes, I have. But nevertheless I think of him. She is bad, and he will never be happy if he marries her. When he asked me to be his wife, he was mistaken as to what would be good for him. He ought not to have made such a mistake. For my sake, he ought not." "That's not quite true, my dear." "But I do not wish him to be unhappy all his life. He is not bad, but she is very bad. I would not for worlds that anybody should tell him that he owed me anything. But if he could be saved from her, oh, I should be so glad." "You won't have my money then?" "No, Lady Linlithgow." "You'd better. It is honestly your own." "I will not take it, thank you." "Then I may as well put it up again." And the Countess replaced the notes in her pocket-book. When this conversation took place, Frank Greystock was travelling back alone from Portray to London. On the same day the Fawn carriage came to fetch Lucy away. As Lucy was in particular distress, Lady Fawn would not allow her to come by any other conveyance. She did not exactly think that the carriage would console her poor favourite, but she did it as she would have ordered something specially nice to eat for anyone who had broken his leg. Her soft heart and compassion for misery, though she would sometimes show her sympathy by strange expressions. Lady Linlithgow was almost angry about the carriage. "How many carriages and how many horses does Lady Fawn keep?" she asked. "1 carriage and 2 horses. She's very fond of sending them up into the streets of London, I think." Lucy said nothing more, knowing that it would be impossible to soften the heart of the dowager in regard to the other. But she kissed the old woman at parting, and then was taken down to Richmond and stayed. She had made up her mind to have one discussion with Lady Fawn about her engagement, the engagement which was no longer an engagement, and then to have done with it. She would ask Lady Fawn to ask the girls never to mention Mr. Greystock's name in her hearing. Lady Fawn had also made up her mind to the same effect. She felt that the subject should be mentioned once, and only once. Of course Lucy must have another place, but there need be no hurry about that. She fully recognized her young friend's feeling of independence, and was herself aware that she would be wrong to offer to the girl a permanent home among her own daughters, and therefore she could not abandon the idea of a future place. But Lucy would of course remain till a situation should be found to her that would be in every sense unexceptionable. There need, however, be no haste, and in the meantime the few words about Frank Greystock must be spoken. They need not, however, be spoken quite immediately. Let there be smiles and joy, and a merry ring of laughter on this first day of the return of their old friend. As Lucy had the same feeling on that afternoon, they did not talk pleasantly and were merry. The girls asked questions about the vulturess as they had heard her called by Lizzie Eustace, and laughed at Lucy to her face when she swore that after a fashion she liked the old woman. "You'd like anybody then," said Nina. "Indeed I don't," said Lucy, thinking at once of Lizzie Eustace. Lady Fawn planned out the next day with great precision. After breakfast, Lucy and the girls were to spend the morning in the old schoolroom, so that there might be a general explanation as to the doings of the last 6 months. They were to dine there at 3, and after dinner there should be the discussion. "Will you come up to my room at 4 o'clock, my dear?" said Lady Fawn, patting Lucy's shoulder in the breakfast parlour. Lucy knew well why her presence was required. Of course she would come. It would be wise to get it over and have it done with. At noon, Lady Fawn, with her 3 eldest daughters, went out in a carriage, and Lucy was busy among the others with books and maps and sheets of scribbled music. Nothing was done on that day in the way of introduction, but there was much of the half jocose acknowledgment of past idleness, and a profusion of resolutions of future diligence. 1 or 2 of the girls were going to commence a course of reading that would have broken the back of any professor, and suggestions were made as to the very rigid rules as to the talking of French and German. "But as we can't talk German," said Nina, "we should simply be dumb." "You'd talk High Dutch, Nina, sooner than submit to that," said one of the sisters. The conclave was still standing in full deliberation when one of the maids entered the room with a very long face. There was a gentleman in the drawing room asking for Miss Morris. Lucy, who at the moment was standing at a table on which were spread an infinity of books, became at once as white as a sheet. Her fast friend, Lydia Fawn, who was standing by her, immediately took hold of her hand quite tightly. The face of the maid was fit for a funeral. She knew that Miss Morris had a follower, and that the follower had come, and that then Miss Morris had gone away. Miss Morris had been allowed to come back, and now, on the very first day, just when my lady's back was turned, here was the follower again. Before she had come up with her message, there had been a unanimous expression of opinion in the kitchen that the fat would all be in the fire. Lucy was as white as marble, and felt such a sudden shock at her heart that she could not speak. And yet she never doubted for a moment that Frank Greystock was the man. And with what purpose but one could he have come there? She had on the old frock in which, before her visit to Lady Linlithgow, she used to pass the morning amid her labours with the girls, a pale, grey, well-worn frock, to which must have been imparted some attraction from the milliner's art, because everybody liked it so well, but which she had put on this very morning as a testimony to all the world around her that she had abandoned the idea of being anything except a governess. Lady Fawn had understood the frock well. "Here is the dear little old woman, just the same as ever," Lydia had said, embracing her. "She looks as if she'd gone to bed before the winter, and had a long sleep like a dormouse," said Cecilia. Lucy had liked it all, and thoroughly appreciated the loving kindness, but she had known what it all meant. She had left them as the engaged bride of Mr. Greystock, the member of Bobsborough, and now she had come back as Lucy Morris, the governess, again. "Just the same as ever," Lucy had said with the sweetest smile. They all understood that in so saying she renounced her lover. And now there stood the maid, inside the room, who, having announced that there was a gentleman asking for Miss Morris, was waiting for an answer. Was the follower to be sent about his business, with a flea in his ear, having come, slyly, craftily, and wickedly, in Lady Fawn's absence? Or would Miss Morris brazen it out and go see him? "Who is the gentleman?" asked Diana, who was the eldest of the Fawn girls. "It's he as used to come after Miss Morris before," said the maid. "It's Mr. Greystock," said Lucy, recovering herself with an effort. "I had better go down to him." "Will you tell him, Mary, that I'll be with him almost immediately?" "You ought to have put on the other frock after all," said Nina, whispering into her ear. "He has not lost much time in coming to see you," said Lydia. "I suppose it was all because he didn't like Lady Linlithgow," said Cecilia. Lucy had not a word to say. She stood for a minute among them, trying to think, and then she slowly left the room. She would not condescend to alter her dress by the aid of a single pin, nor by the adjustment of a ribbon. It might well be that after the mingled work and play of the morning her hair should not be smooth, but she was too proud to look at her hair. The man whom she had loved, who had loved her, but had neglected her, was in the house. He would surely not have followed her hither did he not intend to make reparation for his neglect. but she would use no art with